So what personal brand is and why it matters is at the core of why we even bother with it. And I think that's what we ask here. Why should I even bother with personal brand? Because it sometimes feels a little bit too all about me. It feels a little bit too, it gives some people the ick. Like honestly, it took me a while to get onto it. It took me years before I was in the position where I go, okay, I want the benefits of the personal branding. So just skip to the end and give me everything I need to know so that I can actually get that benefit out of it until it didn't give me the ick anymore. What is the ick? You know the ick, that feeling you get when things are just not quite right. So branding or brand it's what people say and think about you when you're not around to correct them or not around to defend yourself. It's a bit of what you do. It's a bit of what you're known for. It's a whole lot of who you are. It's a lot of your personality traits and quirks and the things that make you uniquely you. Those things are going to come out in a personal brand, probably more than anywhere else. In fact, it's one of the places where you can guarantee it's going to come out because there's often your guard is down when you're in certain situations. So you won't be in a position where you're able to do something or anything else. You might just be stuck in a situation where you can't work with the ability of just going off a reputation of a product or reputation of a service. It's all based upon you working on the basis of your the personality that you've got, the unique traits that you have for yourself. So I just had someone knocking on my door and I'm just not expecting someone to be coming in at this time in the afternoon. So I'll keep going and hopefully they'll go away. Now looking at two very different personal brands, let's look at Kylie Jenner, one of the Kardashians. She's sister to Khloe Kardashian and Kim Kardashian and the daughter of Kris Jenner. So very well-known personality, very much known for reality TV, lip fillers, makeup, a lot of like fake airbrushing and photoshopping of photos. There's a social media following that she has very much known for. She can be very unfriendly and quite unapproachable. So when it's unfriendly and unapproachable, we seem to think that she's not really has that personal brand where she wants to be approachable. She actually wants to be set apart, almost kind of like royalty, like new American royalty. So that's her personal brand, very deliberately cultivated, very much created over time, and it's not something that happened by accident. Tom Holland, the most recent incarnation of Spider-Man in the movies. He's cute, he's sweet, he's polite, he's friendly, he's approachable, charmingly English, turns up to hospitals and entertains kids, turns up to premiere screenings in bizarre places and just turns up on the stage and surprises everyone with his presence there. He's very much a man who wants to be seen as approachable and someone who you can walk up to in a pub and say good day and shake his hand. Again, a very different personal brand and a very deliberate way that that's being designed as well. So what do your colleagues, your friends, your family and others think of you when you're not around? Have a think about that. How do people describe you to other people when they are looking at recommending you as a business for something? If they're looking at you as a potential business partner, how do they think of you when you're not around? How do they approach this subject of you and whether that works? And Celine, yeah, great question here. Is personal brand deliberate to not show who you really are? It can be. So in the case of Kylie, I would say there's another side of Kylie which we don't see. There's another side of me that you don't see. And so the personal brand, it's based upon who you are, but it's not necessarily every part of your life. You still got some room for some privacy here. I'm very much an oversharer, and it's based upon some of my values, which we're going to go into very shortly about those values and how you actually incorporate those into what your personal brand is. But thank you, very good question there. It's not so much saying I don't care what other people think of me, because if you have that attitude, you probably wouldn't be much of a human. All humans at some point give a damn about what someone else thinks of them. It's also not a matter of just saying, look, I'm not going to waste my time worrying about what other people think of me, because it's not just about you, it's about a business as well. So you have to not so much worry about what people think of you, but I think people are going to think of you anyway. So you've got this opportunity to cultivate what it is they think of you, to work with what they think of you rather than just relying upon what they might have thought of you at some stage. It's a matter of being comfortably in control of telling your own story. So that whole thing of, they call it controlling the narrative of your own life. And that's what I think is a very healthy thing is. It's not being so controlled and being anxiously obsessed with what people think of you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the ability to have a story to tell. And that story isn't completely made up. It's not a completely biased and highlight reel of your life, like an Instagram feed, for instance. What it is more like a Facebook feed. You're going to see more of who you are on a Facebook feed than what you would see on an Instagram feed. Instagram is the best possible you, whereas Facebook, sometimes you're up and down a little bit. The you that might be around your friends, they kind of know who you are, or even worse, the you that's around your family. So sometimes you'll say things that are a little bit vulnerable. Other times you say things that are quite powerful. But I'm not telling you to be any of these things. Ultimately, you have to be yourself because you already have some degree of a personal brand. You've already got something that people seem to think about you, or there's something that you have a reputation for, good or bad. That's all those things can be worked with. A bad reputation can be worked away as well. A good reputation is something which you go, well, I know that that's my starting point. So what do I do with that? Because there's no use having a personal brand over here and going, look at all these people, calling my name and saying wonderful things about me, but I don't have any way to leverage that. Excuse me. So, why does this even matter? If we go, well, it's not really about, making people love you and adore you, and it's not really about being anxiously obsessed with what people are thinking about you, and it's not really about necessarily telling your highlight reel of your business or life, why does it matter at all? Well, it's because it gives you opportunity. Most of the opportunities being delivered to me have not been due to my education. In fact, I have not been in any job that I've had or any business venture I've done in the last 20 years. Not once has anyone wanted to ask to see my university diploma or my transcript from university. It just never comes up because they don't come to me because of those qualifications. They don't come to me because of that. They come to me because there's something about me that's been recommended, or that they have decided they want to work with, or they've seen the activity I've done online that's come from a point of view of my controlled and designed personal brand. Now, I'm not going to say my personal brand's always been on point, because it's not. It's particularly good this year because I've made a really strong effort towards getting it right. But in the past years, it's kind of hovered around the edges of going, oh yeah, I want to be sort of known to be reliable and all that. But I also want to be known to be like, a funny guy who's approachable and people can laugh with and they could easily have a conversation with. I didn't really know who I was. I was all these different things, and I didn't really know who I was. I hadn't put it in the context of what I actually want to achieve with my business. So I just worked on, these are all really nice things about me, but they had no link through to my business. So the opportunities that have come from developing that personal brand means that I work with better quality clients now. I work with clients who have actually approached me. I'm not really marketing myself to anyone in particular. Just about everything I do now is now organic posting, not advertising for myself. It comes from creating, a version of myself that is very much me, but it's a storyteller, someone who's out there telling stories, and those stories will resonate with someone. The point of being in a personal brand is, and let's just take aside from the moment that none of us are business owners, we're all just potential employees. So we're looking for jobs out there. Nearly 35% of the Australian workforce is made up now of freelancers and contract workers. So that could be you. I am a contract and freelance worker, so I'm part of that 35%. Some people call it the gig economy. I think that's probably, considering that the Australian government's now referred to the gig economy as a cancer on society, I probably wouldn't call it the gig economy. I just saw it freelancing and contract work. I like it. It's flexible. I get to do what I want to do. I'm not forced into it. It's actually my choice to do it. So I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything by not being a full-time employee of someone. But with that many people who are made up of that freelancer and contract worker cohort, then you understand that then 70% of employers, so people who may want to go and hire you, are now screening you via social media and Google searches. So I would say if someone wanted to look me up on Google and social media, I'd want to be easy to be found. So easy because I've got a name that's easy to find. Thank you, hippie parents, for that. That was the gift that keeps on giving. Not so much in the 80s when it was not the gift that kept on giving, but for now it is. But 70% of employers are now screening people for their social media and their Google searches to find out about them. I do it even when I meet new friends. I Google them because I want to know if they're meeting this new friend. I want to know a bit about their background. The surprise of getting to know them and all that doesn't override my need for safety. So if I'm meeting new friends, I'm going to their house for the first time or something, I want to know a little bit about them. Are they a murderer? Have they been convicted for violent crime that may put me at risk? It's a very real thing. And I'm not a woman either. So if I think for women, that might even be be a little bit more intense. You'd actually want to filter things a bit more. The Tinder world, I guess, has made us a little bit more risk-taking, but even then, there's risks to be taken there. When it comes to inviting people into your business, whoa, you do not want the wrong person in there. So you want to be able to see if there's anything that you should know on Google and through social media if you have access to it. In fact, these days, it's almost looked upon as if you don't have any digital footprint whatsoever. That's a highly suspicious thing because you've really deliberately gone about hiding yourself. And whilst that might be very good and you have all the right in the world to do that, an employer also has the right to find other reasons not to hire you because they can't find anything about you. And also, 43% of employers are now checking on staff social media for compliance to make sure that they are still complying with, behavioural policies and social media policies. While you might say, oh, but that's my private social media, that's my world, my opinions. At the same time, there's already been legal precedent set in Australia where your employer can be sued for the behaviour of an employee that's kind of out there and doing something terrible. You can actually be sued, you can actually be charged as a business and fined heavily as a business for the behavior of employees on their own social media. Doesn't seem right, doesn't it? But at the same time, there's a legal precedent that's been set for that. You can now actually, lose your job over the things you do on social media that don't comply with a behavioral part of your contract. So with all this in mind, bear in mind too that the average time of a job in Australia is about 3.5 years. So the 30 years and the gold watch at the end of it is definitely over because these days we last about 3.5 years. And so at some point, whether you're an employee or you're a contractor, you'll be looking for new work every 3.5 years at some point. In some places in Australia, particularly transient places, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Darwin, Alice Springs, places where the population is very unstable, yet that might be even less. It could be every 2.5 years. So, with all that in mind, we haven't even decided how we're going to do this personal brand thing yet, but it's coming, I promise you. Let's look at some people who have really just nailed their personal brand. So the point where their personal brand has kind of made them a little bit famous. And the first one I will look at is Marie Kondo, the organizational queen from Japan. She is impeccable. Every time you see her, she is impeccably groomed. Everything about her reflects organization. So not only do her shelves only contain the things that spark joy, but her clothes are also the things that spark joy in her. Her organized wardrobe matches her organized life. And her organized life is then reflected in the organizational ability she has in a home or in an office or anywhere where she goes to tidy up cluttered messes. So everything lines up. The colors line up. The lines line up. Clean lines, clean surfaces, but allowing for a joyful life that has all that. Whenever you see her, she is joyful. She's smiling. She's friendly. You could almost just want to be her friend because she'd be so smiley and friendly and positive all the time. So that's someone who started off by building this and became a star because she had a strong personal brand already. She was working in an organization and she was able to enunciate and articulate what it is that she was talking about. So all these things are amazing. They allow you to be so much more in control of what that personal brand is. Another person is Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, if you come across him, you might love him, you might hate him. I kind of like flip-flop between the two. Sometimes I really can't stand him. The other time I'm like, yep, this guy's a genius. He's very carefully crafted a personal brand of himself for the past 20 years. And he has worked in areas such as for his parents' wine business, where he decided that he was going to be the first wine guy on YouTube. And he became this wine library TV where he would go in and describe wines, talk about wines, do taste tests of wines, help people to pick wines more, which of course then got more people who wanted to buy wines from his father's wine business. Now, he didn't inherit that business, his father still owns it, but it did give him a start off in business, which then went to he had to build his own business from then on. Now, this is a guy who has been selling baseball cards and trading them, garage shopping, washing cars since he was a kid, because he was just so entrepreneurially minded. So his personal brand now reflects that entrepreneurship of him, where he's always looking for a deal, always looking for a bargain, always looking for a new way to make money. He's always jumping on those things, so it's no surprise that the first guy to hop on YouTube was one of the first guys to invest in Facebook, was one of the first guys to ever invest in Uber. They were one of the first people to develop NFTs or non-fungible tokens, selling access to stupid art that he's selling, or to his time and access to his in-person conferences. So he's always on top of those things. His brand is always to be the earlier adopter. Now, so far, his early adoptions haven't failed him. He's actually been on top of them all. We're all still sitting here waiting to see if that NFT thing is something which he's jumped on early, which is going to work as well. It doesn't seem to be causing him any problem. He's made tens of millions of dollars just out of that. The guy is now a certifiable billionaire. Another one who is quite familiar, you will see, has an excellent personal brand, is Brene Brown. Brene Brown is a professor. She talks about everything from having a better life to being a stronger woman in business, to be able to express yourself in an authentic way and being able to find your voice. She's very, very good at this. She perfectly matches that. I'm a mum, I'm a professor, I'm a coach, I'm living out my dream. She has this way of making people feel comfortable around her. You do not feel like she's looking down her nose at you. You always feel like she's someone who's like, hey mate, I've been there too. I've gone through this too. So you can come through this with me because we can be a team together. Even though you'll probably never meet her, when you start watching some of her TED Talks, some of her recorded lessons, reading her books, I've read a couple of her books now and I'm fascinated. I think she's fantastic. I'm definitely a convert with it. It's that empathy she brings forth, that the ability of empathy to achieve greater things in life and understanding people deeper. She doesn't have to wear big crystals around her neck. She doesn't have to walk around with doTERRA beads and smelly oils all over her to have some sort of sense of what spirituality is. It just exudes through her. The spirituality, the reality all seem to merge, and she's got that brand now that makes her approachable, authentic, but also very effective. And it's one of the great examples, I think, of someone who's come from a non-speaking, non-celebrity background, has now become something of a household name when it comes to people who are in that personal development world. You may not have heard of Lisa, but Lisa is a friend of mine who works in the Meta or Facebook community training group. First Nations woman from the Brisbane area. Her mob is in northern New South Wales. I think she's Kamilaroi folks. So she is very much about the empowerment of Indigenous business owners, and especially women as Indigenous business owners. She started off the Black Coffee movement in Australia, which is where a whole bunch of Indigenous businesses and their allies come together to have coffee together, and they call it Black Coffee, which is kind of clever. She started that off. She now runs a 16-person digital and creative agency called Iscariot Media. She's amazing woman, so strong in who she is, but then still so humble. She's achieved so much, but still so humble about it. Her personal brand is that she has a particular strength in ensuring that Indigenous voices are heard at all levels. Wherever there's decisions being made, she says that an Indigenous person should be there as well. So she's very strong on that. Every time I've seen her, she's wearing one of her t-shirts, which is about, proud and black. It would be something like Indigenous business is deadly, or at least something that's a t-shirt she's had made. You can see there in the background there, all of her t-shirts are lined up. She's known for wearing black t-shirts with messages on them. So every time I've seen her, except in this one photo where she's in a turquoise shirt, she's always wearing one of those black t-shirts. She's found her look. She shaved her hair off in response to supporting someone who she loved who had cancer. She's now kept her hair shaved off because she just likes it. And she says, because I look deadly, and I think that's cool. She's an awesome person. I really love her, and I think she's got an unshakable personal brand. 4 very different people, 4 very, very different approaches, but they're all very clear about what they're on about. They're all consistent about who they show up as. Lisa always shows up as that same person every time I run into her. Even when I ran into her randomly in Cairns while I was at a conference and she was at a conference next door, she's still the same Lisa. Nothing different about her. They also make themselves easy to find and easy to follow. So Lisa is not particularly active on LinkedIn, but very active on Facebook. Considering we're both Facebook trainers, that probably makes some sense. We probably should be there. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. That's where my people tend to be. So you want to be easy to find, easy to follow, easy to continue to follow as well. So that the reason why you have followed someone in the first place, they continue to be that delivery of value or delivery of information or delivery of inspiration to you, no matter when that is. And the other thing is too, and this is a great thing I actually came across just a couple of weeks ago on someone's feed. It said, at the same time as you want to be attracting people to you, you also want to be repelling some people from you. That's a powerful lesson to learn from the point of personal brand and also from business as well. Not everyone's your customer, not everyone's your fan, not everyone's going to be your follower. Some people are going to be repelled by you. I've got people who are repelled by me. They think I'm inauthentic or something like that. And I'm like, no, if you really knew me, you know I'm kind of like this everywhere. It's this way where you go, you know, I've got to have this understanding of knowing that not everyone's going to love you. And that's completely okay. That's hard to get used to if you're someone who's a bit of a pleaser like I am. But eventually I got there and understood that I'm going to attract some, I'm going to repel some. But what's important is I attract the right ones and repel the right ones. I don't want to repel the people I want to help, but in the meantime, I'm attracting a whole bunch of people I can't help. So that thing of not being for everyone is a really vital point of understanding who you are as a personal brand. So how do I work on my own personal brand? See, I've got a lot of photos I've shown in here of myself. My partner takes a lot of my photos for me. Definitely makes me feel a lot more comfortable being in front of a camera when I'm utterly uncomfortable being in front of a camera. I really quite hate it. But because I guess the way that he makes me feel comfortable and was able to make me laugh and sort of take the piss out of myself a little bit, it helps me to understand that. But before I did any of that stuff, I had to go back and work out what my values are, work out what I stand for, what are the things I really find important that I carry everywhere in my life. I'll explain a bit about what they are a little bit later on, but to give you a bit of a subset, my 4 or 5 values I landed on was I wanted to be approachable, I wanted to be vulnerable, I wanted to be able to tell stories about myself that weren't always good stories, I wanted to be authentic, I want to make sure that the person you get on these webinars is the same person you get in person, is the same person whose hand you shake at a conference, is the same person you'll run into at the supermarket. The other one was I wanted to be effective. So to be effective means that I was going to be able to deliver things that people can use to really work well on. And finally, I wanted one of my great values to come across is that I wanted to be, I can't forget it now. I've got 5 of them. I always know them off by heart. It's approachable, authentic, vulnerable, effective, and I said approachable, didn't I? Whatever the other one was, it'll come to me in a second. But those are the questions I have to ask myself every time before I go on to something like this, before I step on a stage, before I work one-on-one with someone to do a digital solutions 1-hour session with too. Some of you have been in sessions with me, and thank you so much for coming and joining me on here, because hopefully I did that right thing. I lived up to those values. But then I can have those values, but they have to be translated into something. I have to know who I am and who I want to serve. So I had to get used to the fact that there's some people who I'm just not going to be able to work with because I'm not the right person for them and they're not necessarily the right person for me. Then going down a path where you're developing, finding out your ikigai, and your ikigai is a really powerful one because it's that thing in life that it's IKIGAI, and it's a Japanese concept which is all around the idea of finding what you should be doing in life. What your true purpose is in life. And it takes about, I've got a bit of this later on, we'll look at it, but it's basically what makes you money, what do you love doing, what does the world need, and what are you really good at? What are the skills you already have that can contribute to that? Celine's asking, do you make your personal brand your business card? You can. I've got 2. I've got my personal business card, and then I've got my business card, depending on what I'm repping for at the time. So if I'm working on the Clickstarter brand, which is a little bit less these days, I'll have my Clickstarter card. Otherwise, if I'm advertising myself as a coach or as a consultant, then I am my business. So it's me, a photo of me on there so you can see who it was and remember who it was that you were working with. So yeah, it can be. It doesn't have to be though. It depends on what your brand is. I think it's nice to put a photo of yourself on something simply because it helps someone to connect the person they met with the card they've got, with who they wanted to follow up with. Especially if you had a great first meeting with them, you really connected well. Having that photo will help to spur those memories of the feeling they had when you made them feel special for wanting to talk to them, or that you had some kind of time where you're able to give them some really good wisdom or some really good value out of your expertise. So there's a lot of things I do to my personal brand that happen all before I had my first photo shoot. I had to work all that out first. Before I went off and had my headshots done, before I went off and started making videos, I had to work out all this stuff first, and it didn't happen quickly. It didn't happen within a week. You're not going to step out of this webinar today and instantly know how to work your personal brand. It's a process. So all this had to be sorted out first, so I knew what the flavor of everything was going to be. So I knew by knowing my values, I know what it is, who I want to work with. When I know who I want to work with, then I know what I actually want to achieve out of my business. When I achieve out of my business what I want to achieve, then I kind of know what I want that to look like. Then I'll know what the ideas around logos and colors and websites and social media and mood and how I describe things and how I deliver social media posts and how I do webinars like this one and who I want to attract into those webinars all came from all that pre-work before I ever had the first photo of me taken by someone else to use on a LinkedIn profile or on a Facebook profile. So there's a lot of work you do first. I think we're going to kind of skip a bit here into a place where you go, the things where, if I give you like all my points, so I'm going to say it's like, this is how you're going to build this thing out. You have a good personal brand when, for instance, you've moved jobs or changed companies or consulting for someone else and nobody really noticed. They'd not noticed that you moved to another workplace. And this is best, I guess, represented by hairdressers. Hairdressers will go from one salon to the next salon to the next salon, and people will go with them. The customers will want to follow them simply because they don't care what salon you're going to. They just care where you are because they've got that personal connection with you. I finished working with one particular business consulting firm as a contracted consultant and started working with another one around about, it would have been November 2020, and nobody knew. By October 2021, when I did a tour around the Northern Territory for October Business Month that we have here in the Northern Territory, no one knew that I'd actually not worked for that other company at all, because the way I was acting was no different. The person I was no different. The things that I was doing were no different. Was I talking trash about the people that I'd no longer worked for? Of course not, because I worked with them for a couple of years and really liked the people there. Me leaving for other opportunities had nothing to do with them. The quality of my work was not impacted by then. I could be the same person in both of those. In fact, I was so close and still so close to them that I still get invited to some of their celebrations and launches and all that, because they appreciate that I left on good terms with them. I appreciate that they were good to me when I left as well. And it wasn't in a place where it was bad. It wasn't a bad leaving. So if you can leave one workplace and go to another and no one really notices that you're any different, that's a strong personal brand. Another thing too is you might still be friends with some of the people you used to work with. That shows a strong personal brand, because people who you used to work with consider you to be a friend regardless of whether you work with them or not. That's not necessarily like an absolute must-have. Sometimes there's some issues you might have had with a previous workplace that stop you from being friends with those people. Or sometimes friends are friends of convenience. But if you still have friends that you used to work with, and you could drop in and have coffee with them anytime, or you could even go out for lunch with them and they gladly come and join you, that's a strong personal brand. Another strong sign of a personal brand is that people ask you for advice in the area that you have expertise in. So if you're really strong in an area such as, life coaching and being able to give people the advice they need to get better lives and to have better relationships, you'll find that people will ask you for that advice. You'll get messages on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram all the time. Oh my goodness, I can't believe you redecorated your own house. Like, where do you suggest I go to get inspiration? People ask you those things. In my case, it's always, I saw that post you did on Facebook. That was amazing. How did you learn to write like that? And so I'd explain, okay, this is some of the things I would do. In fact, I've got this YouTube video over here I'll point you to that will actually help you to teach that. I've got people asking me that stuff all the time. You probably would too. It doesn't mean you have to give them all your knowledge for free. It just means that people are going to ask you. You've got a strong personal brand when someone knows what your core is, what your knowledge is, and they're able to then to talk to you about that and ask you questions. And whilst they may or may not be expecting instant answers from you, the fact that they recognize that you have the answers shows that you've very, very successfully created a reputation. And that's what a personal brand kind of is. It's a reputation for being the expert in the room in that particular thing. So part of that process is too understanding what your thing is. So people will refer other people to you without being asked to refer you. So for instance, if you've done some really good work with one woman and she goes to her friends and says, actually, you know what, if you want to get this work done, go and see her, she's amazing. You haven't asked them to refer you. You haven't said, hey, make sure you leave me a Google review or make sure you tell your friends. None of that happens. You just get referred anyway. I don't tend to like asking people for referrals and reviews because I find them really tacky, and I don't believe anything that's written in online reviews anyway. I think they're mostly fake. So I just go, I don't even say it. I just let the work speak for itself, and if they're happy, they will refer me. And one of my biggest clients recently referred me to now another company who is now my biggest client by far. And that was such a win, but I did not ask them to refer me. I did not ask them to send me on to someone else. It just happened naturally. And that's when you know you've got a strong personal brand. You don't have to ask for these things. They just happen. So now we get to the really good part. Swig myself some Pepsi Max. How do we start that personal brand? How do we begin that process of building a strong personal brand? Well, the first thing you need to understand is your values. And your values are going to be based upon who you show up as in every part of your life. So here's a bunch of different values you could do. Take a screenshot if you want to, or just watch this again on YouTube. It'll be available later this evening. Your values are going to be a combination of 3, 4, maybe 5 of these things. I wouldn't go any more above that. Some of mine are in there, like authentic is one of mine. You might think that that showing beauty is one of the values that's very important to your brand. Absolutely, that's completely valid. Helping others, being effective, saving the world, having a priority on equality or women's empowerment, Aboriginal business, opportunity for others, wealth, finding peace, working in collaboration. All these things are very, very strong values. There could be hundreds of them in there, but if you can narrow it down to about 5. Now I got mine down to 16, and then what I did, I said, okay, out of that 16 of my values that I've got, what are the things that don't even show up on my best days? Because that's when I went, well, they're not values. They're just nice to haves. They'd be things I'd like to be. That's aspirational. I wish I was like that, but it doesn't show up in my best days. Well, it's probably not going to show up my worst days either. So from my best days to my 16, I went to what doesn't show up my best days. Well, then that took me about to 9. So I went to 16 to 9. So it was like a bit of a humble moment where I had to go, oh, all these things I thought my values are actually not. They're just things I wish I was. So next then was going, okay, what are the things then out of that 9 that then show up in my worst days? And the things that still showed up in my worst days, I was still authentic, I was still vulnerable, I was still wanting to be effective and was effective. I still had approachability, like just because I was having a bad day didn't make me any less approachable. And I went, actually, these are my 5 really strong things: effective, authentic, vulnerable, honest. That was the one I was thinking about before, honesty, about being honest about the fact that I'm struggling to work with you because I don't think we're a good match. So I could actually say that to someone. For business, okay, this is a really leading question, Celine, asking if you have a list of values for business branding. So any of those could be a business branding values. It depends on what your own personal values are. So it's going to be, if you believe in efficiency, then that will color everything you're going to do as far as your personal brand goes. If you believe in creating wealth for people or for yourself, that's going to be in your values as well. So they can be thinking like they're a bit more businessy because they're around money and wealth, but collaboration is also something. Being a disruptor is also a strong business thing for someone to grow into a business that disrupts an existing industry. Putting love first in business is also a completely valid thing that some people do. There's brands like Patagonia, for instance, that produce amazing outdoor wear and ski wear and that sort of thing, and they have very strong values that have nothing to do with how much money they make. But they've got missions and visions they need to carry out, and they're the guideposts which they use to go forward in their business. But just making money and being sustainable as a business may not be enough of a value to drive the people who are in control of that company. Should they be a sustainable business? Absolutely. Should they make money and be profitable? Definitely. There's people's livelihoods that are on the line there. So you may actually put that and go, being sustainable as a business and as a citizen of the planet maybe strong business things for you. Being conservative in your decisions and being trustworthy is another one. There's tons and tons of values you can throw in there. Any value that's a you that you can always show up as. Consistency is a really strong one that I think a lot of people would like to think they are. Particularly, I know, Celine, in your case, where you work in a place where the things that are valued by your clients are consistency, professionalism, all those things could be your values. But they have to be also your values, not just your business values. Otherwise, you'll just be faking it. And they'll crash down, because sometimes in your worst days, you will not be true to those values in their entirety. So hopefully that answers that question. So let's have a look at, so 4 of my values: honest, vulnerable, humble, and effective. We're going to look at these now and how they play out in a conversation with a colleague in the workplace. So let's just say the colleague is interrupting you while you're in the middle of work, and you're like, your honest side will say, I really need to get this done. Can we talk about this at 3 p.m.? So the honest person is saying, I can't do this now. I would be dishonest if I was telling you, let's do this now, because I know that it'll cause me problems, but I can see you at 3 p.m. The vulnerable person would say, when they're being interrupted, look, there's some family things going on. I'm a little distracted right now. Can we talk about this later? Because I'm just feeling like I need a bit of brain space. That's being vulnerable and honest. They're kind of related to each other. Being humble could come out as, thank you, I also want to highlight the rest of the team when you are called out for an award. So instead of going up there in the Academy Award and spouting about how wonderful they were, I've really worked hard for this, this is the greatest moment of my life, and I feel like I really deserve this for all the work I've done. You never hear that from Academy Award winners. What you hear is, I only am able to do this because my husband at home is makes sure that the family things run right when I'm away filming. I can only do this because my parents helped to make me the woman that I am today. I can only do this because I had a director and a producer who had a vision that I really bought into. Without that vision, I wouldn't be here today. That's being humble, but not humble bragging. It's not saying, it's not false modesty. And false modesty, people will see through straight away. We know it when, people in corporate world make like those crocodile tear apologies, where they're making an apology, but they don't really feel the apology. They're not really sorry. They're just putting on the show. And then an effective person will say, look, this thing you want to learn, we can either do it the easy way, or we can do it the effective way. Which way do you want to go with? And most people will say, actually, I want to be the most effective. If it's not the easiest, that's okay. Let's work it out. What is it? And that's when you're playing out those different values in conversations with someone. So you just replace that with your particular lot of values and how you would then talk that out. For honest, vulnerable, humble, and effective, let's say with a friend. So not with a work colleague, a friend. So it's when someone comes to you and starts whinging about some big drama in their life, and this is what I say this all the time to my friends. I say straight away, look, would you like advice, or you just want to be listened to right now? And honestly, it makes for such smoother friendships, because immediately they go, I just want to vent. And that's awesome. And then they can vent, and I'm glad for them to vent to me. But I'm not then jumping in trying to solve all their problems when they don't want their problems solved. But if they come to me and say, actually, you've been through this, so I'd like your advice on that, then I'm able to step into that role as well. So being true to your values actually helps you to get on through life a lot better as well, because you're not faking anything. The vulnerable person's like saying, look, I don't want to go out tonight, and to be honest, I'm struggling a little today. I just need a bit of alone time. And that's another thing I tell my friends, is like when they go, we're all going out this Friday night, we're going to go dancing, and I'm like, I couldn't think of anything worse because I've had a really rough week. I need to sleep. I just want to sit down and watch some Star Trek and eat some pizza in bed on a Friday night. That's what I'll look like. I just need my alone time. I'll catch up with you guys for brunch tomorrow though, okay? The humble response would be when someone says something really nice to you. So instead of that sort of that false humility where someone says, oh my God, you look so good today. And you go, oh no, like it's just so, I have to say it's my hairdresser. It just makes me look different. Or, I went to Vivian and she dressed me a whole different way the other day. The humble person would actually go, you know what, thank you. It means the world for me to hear that. It really does. It made my day. And that's not being false humility. That's actually being truthful. You're saying, I'm acknowledging you saying that. Thank you so much. And it actually means a lot to me that you've done that. The effective person then would say, well, if we like, we can work on some strategies together. Say, for instance, that person has come to you and they said, yeah, you'd like it. They'd like advice. And you go, okay, well, if you want advice, we can work on some strategies together to make this thing work for you. And that's a surprisingly disarming thing to say to someone who's in an emotional state, where you can go, okay, so if you do want some advice, let's work on some strategies that immediately gets the right brain and the left brain working together to solve problems. So values as part of your personal brand are also valuable in you making your way through life. In storytelling, for instance, which is a very big part of what you're going to do in social media, the honesty comes out as, for instance, these are my examples. So the honesty is, I failed in my first business and it was spectacular. So I'm being honest with you, my first business was not a success. It was a resounding disaster. And I've had some other disasters since, until one actually finally kicked in right. The vulnerability would say, when it comes to my own imposter syndrome, that I say that even today that little voice is asking, who do you think you are? Every time I step on a stage, I just go, who are you to be speaking in front of 200 people right now? Why you? What's so special about you? And I have to remind myself of, just a second, actually, I've done a whole lot of stuff that got me the qualification to be here. The humbleness of someone is going, when they get on that stage, and in my case, is saying, you know what, years ago I dreamed of one day being on this stage. And I did that recently when I was in the Sunshine Coast, doing a conference for Meta, for Facebook. And the stage I was stepping onto was a stage which I watched a couple of concerts on many, many years ago. And, you know, I actually looked at that stage and went, gee, there was a time when I really thought, you know, I'd love to be on a stage like this, to a crowd like this, to talk to them, to be able to deliver some sort of wisdom or some sort of, you know, some tools and techniques for them to help them get through business. And then, 6 years later, I'm on that stage, that very same stage, speaking to people. That's a very humbling thing. So to actually share that with people and saying, yeah, years ago, I watched, you know, Boy and Bear, this band playing on here, and thought, man, this would be a great place for a conference. It'd be awesome to speak on this stage. And the effectiveness in you, so if this was one of your values, would say things such as, you know what, I made these mistakes years ago, and if I wasn't so stupid back then, I would have done this. So you go, okay, if I hadn't have let my emotions guide who I was and what I was doing, then I would have done something very different. Here it is. So all those are basically helping you to show up as the person who is reflective of who you really are. So you're not putting on an act. You're not trying to. So this is what we get wrong when people are trying to psych themselves up to get on stage, or psych themselves up for a LinkedIn local networking night, or a BNI chapter meeting, or anywhere where they have to speak with people they haven't met before. Is we're trying to psych ourselves up because we're pretending to be someone we're not. If you're just being yourself, and I know everyone says, oh, just be yourself, it's going to be great, nothing's going to go wrong. That's not true. Being yourself just as having a strategy, because if you are someone who is strategic in nature, then have a strategy before you go into those situations. This will help your personal brand along so much, because you're not always having to second guess yourself. You're not always trying to go, oh, is this really me? I feel so fake. I feel like I'm doing something I shouldn't really be doing. If you get to a networking meeting and you sit in a corner and you achieve nothing, and that's who you are, great. Networking is probably not for you. So if you're trying to force yourself to do networking, it's so painful because you feel like you're being fake. Don't do networking. Do something else instead. There's something for every kind of personality that can work. You can network just as effectively online as what you can when you're in a networking event situation. So that probably gives a few people a little bit of relief that they don't always have to go to networking events. You don't. I don't go to many every year. I've kind of got around it by organising my own networking meeting. So I organise a networking meeting of my own every month. So I don't have to be the networker. I just be the facilitator, and it's awesome. It means I get to. The control freak in me gets to do what he likes to do, controlling the flow of things, and meanwhile other people network really well. And through that, I also network very well because I'm organising the thing. So the next thing is who you are and what you want to accomplish. And by this I mean what you really are, like an authentic, honest look at who you are. And this will really help you out with your values as well. You're going to understand that sometimes, and related to that networking conversation we just had then, sometimes you just have to own up to the fact that you are not a networker. You're just crap at it. Or you might be that, you know what, you're just really bad at getting work done. You're very good at being a technician and a planner and a strategist, but putting all that stuff down on paper and designing it up for someone, you're terrible at it. It's actually knowing not just what you're good at, but what you really suck at as well. So you ask yourself a few questions. Ultimately, what drives you? In what places do you do really well? What are the things that you do that drain all the energy out of you? But what stuff actually fuels you as well? So you're not just looking at the things to avoid, you're looking at the things you're kind of leaning more towards. Like for instance, I love speaking in public. It energizes me, it fuels me, I'm good at it, and it drives me to do that. But the things I'm not very good at is sitting down on a weekend working on building a website for a business I don't believe in. That sort of stuff drains my energy, and I don't do it well, and I don't work very well in that setting. Some people work great surrounded by people, but others don't. Some people just need to work alone. I have a bit of both. When I'm in my networking mode, I like to be around people. I like to get feedback. I like everyone to call me pretty every 5 minutes because, there's a little narcissist in me that needs to be fed. But also find that, well, sometimes I just want to work on my own. If I'm working on something where I need to write things, like for tonight, I'm glad I'm going to be on my own because I'm just going to be here in my home office, just writing out all my posts for social media for the week. And I'm going to feel great doing that. But it also tells you what industries you find interesting. As a consultant or a freelancer, you may find that working with certain industries really energizes you, but for others it doesn't. Working with organic, touchy-feely, all-natural, heart-centered kind of businesses may really just energize you. But working for tradies like plumbers and electricians doesn't fit your vibe. Me personally, I love working with tradies because they're very, very much about like, I want to achieve this, I want to do this, and I've got this much to spend. They kind of let you know everything up front, so you're not really having to draw things out of them all the time. Whereas sometimes working with more feeling oriented and personal service industries, you have to drag so much out of someone to get the feeling of what they want. And also, where do you want to be at the end of your career? For me, in my life, I want to be able to pick up my suitcase and fly to wherever I want to fly and keep working from wherever I am, from whatever hotel, resort, or villa, or kitchen table of some friend or a relative that I'm working from for the week. I want to be able to do that. That's important to me. So then you say, well, that might sort of lean towards the kind of people you want to work with, rather than working with highly soft, high maintenance, high touch people in the town where you live. Doesn't really lead to that. Or you might go, actually, I want to do that high touch work. I want to be able to meet with people in person every week and help them out. And then also, what impact do you want to have? Do you want to have an impact on your local area, on just a few businesses? Do you not want to really have much of an impact at all? All these things drive what kind of personal brand you're going to be. So knowing who you are actually helps to attract people who are like you. So that like attracts when it comes to humanity. We're driven towards people who are like we are. Although when it comes to our partners, we tend to be attracted more to people who are not like us. A very interesting thing. I tend to be high energy, high working hours, love my work. My partner though, low energy, peaceful person, very heart-centered, very touchy-feely, very spiritual. I'm about as spiritual as a house brick. So to see value in your point of view, these people will probably be a lot like you, and they're much more likely to follow you when you attract those people to you. So number 3, what are you great at? And what do you love doing? And this is what I get sort of that ikigai thing where we go, there's certain things that you're great at, there's certain things you love doing, and they may not meet. They may not actually meet. You might be really great at Excel spreadsheets, but you absolutely hate working at them. You just know how to do it. For me, tech support and helping people with their computers and phones, I'm really good at it. But it sucks. I hate doing it because to me it just drains my energy, and I just go, you're going to be back with me in another month. I'm going to be asking all the same questions all over again. It makes it really hard to do. When you look at the things that you're great at, that sort of lines up. It shows in that you're leading people by example in what you're doing. So if you're really great at, let's say, writing, really good writer, and you're helping other people with their writing, everything you write will be leading by example. You're so good at it that you've got credibility in that area. You can teach other people. You're seen as the expert in writing. But let's just say there's something you love doing that's not related to writing. You tend to have a lot of enthusiasm for it, right? You're very clear in your communication about it. I know that my passion for Star Wars and Star Trek, I can tell you all about the backstory, history and lore of various aliens and planets and civilizations that are in these universes that are completely and utterly made up. But I'll talk about them like they are real people in a real timeline that really exists. And I can consistently talk about that over and over because I'm very passionate about those things. It's also a very aspirational thing. I tend to be so passionate about it that others who are mildly interested in that actually might go, wow, I actually wanted to read more about this. That sounds fascinating. Now, if I wanted to mash those three things, all those things together, whilst I have credibility as a social media trainer, it doesn't translate to the enthusiasm I've got about Star Trek and Star Wars, but I'm also very enthusiastic about social media marketing for small businesses. So I go, okay, I've got credibility and I've got enthusiasm there. I lead by example by having a killer social media presence, and I'm very clear in my communication when it comes to my webinars, when it comes to all the things I'm working at. I can teach it, and I'm consistently learning more good things about it. So in that, I found that the thing I wanted to land on for me was social media and personal branding, because they're things that I do lead by example on and things that I'm consistently producing. And that's how I got this Ikigai thing. Ikigai is basically, what are the skills that you have? What is the thing you love? What are the things that the world needs? And what are the things you're going to get paid from? So as you bring all those together, you describe your passion, your mission, your profession, your vocation, which eventually comes to the middle of the purpose of your life, the Ikigai, the thing that's the core of everything you do. And for me, it's teaching. Who would have known? I was a teacher. For me, it's not so much that I love just consuming Star Trek and Star Wars, but I love teaching other people about the intricacies of that universe. That's where some of my passion is. Now, can I make money out of that? Not really, but I have skills in social media and branding and marketing that I can make money from. So I start to sort of bring all these together into this little core, which is about teaching. It's about training and teaching. And that's something which I've got the skills to do. I love doing it. The world needs it, and I can make money doing it. So therefore, I'm not a web designer. I'm now a trainer and a coach, more than that. Number 4, what is uniquely you? What is the things that are your specific strengths, the things that make you, you? What are you complimented on? What have you excelled at in the past? What do you do better than most other people? These are your strengths. These are the things that are really big around you. So as you start to describe these things, what they are in your life, you start to form a bit of a picture of who it is you really are. And the closer you get to that, the closer you are to being able to explain that, because now you're going to start talking about those strengths, not as a bragging person. It's like, oh, I'm really fashionable, I've got a really good eye for fashion. Look at my great outfit that I've got on here. And more of a case that you've got an eye for fashion, and that helps you to be able to have an eye for design as well, which helps you to be able to advise people better towards their graphic design or their video presence and that sort of thing. But you need to be specific about how you solve problems in that area. Show how you in the past, and you can tell some stories around this, of how you helped other people win the day when it came to them having to solve their problems in the area that you have expertise in. And what about you made that happen? Was there a specific way that you communicated that made that happen? Did you conduct a webinar that allowed people to learn from you? Did you sit down with this person and go over 2 hours to try and get it out of them what it is they wanted to achieve in life? Or did you have some kind of technique or some way of listening that enabled you to do that? Did you learn a certificate, and you did a mental health first aid certificate, and that allowed you to be able to get a stressed client into a much better state, that they were able to not only follow your instructions, but start to get their mental life together as well? You need to know who your audience is. That's so important, because are you talking to the right people? You can have a broad area of interest, let's just say women. You're interested in helping women, but you want to help a specific type of women. So let's just say you want to go from being broad of helping women to helping a particular niche of women who you want to be able to empower. So we go, well, we don't want to be broad, we want to be niche. Well, if we want to be niche, then we want to go, I want to help women who are from migrant backgrounds to gain employment in Australia. That could be what it is you want to do. Or you could be you want to help business owners to prepare their businesses for sale. That's a very specific niche. You're not just helping business owners, not just helping small business owners, but ones who are looking to prepare to sell. So that's a very specific niche. When you go in very broad categories, so for instance, for me, it'd be saying, I want to help people get more out of Facebook. What I actually want to do is help more established businesses to get more out of Facebook. So that's my niche. They're going to be established businesses that have already got runs on the board. And then, of course, you've got to bring your brand online. You've got to bring this thing to life with a website. You've got to bring this thing to life with your Google sites. You can use Wix, you can use Weebly, any of these things, WordPress if you really want to go down that path. But if you're just doing, if you're a solopreneur and you don't really want to spend a lot of money, do a free site on Google Sites. Seriously, that thing's awesome. It's such a great free tool. Wix is a fairly cheap do-it-yourself tool as well. Weebly, pretty good as well. And it also has a link in with Square payments, so you can have a shop online as well. And on you, you're going to have a bit of stuff like an about you. You're going to talk about your past experiences, links to your socials, talk about what your value is to people. Professional logos and photos come later, testimonials, some clear calls to action on how people can work with you. All that becomes part of your personal brand. Your social media places, so you're going to have a presence on Facebook and probably LinkedIn, but maybe Instagram as well if you've got a very visual product or service, and TikTok if you've got a particular penchant for making interesting, entertaining videos, that could work for you as well. LinkedIn is very easy to get momentum on, by the way. If you're a solopreneur and you're working with other business owners or you're working with other professionals, that could be a really good place for you. It's a great thing for careers and a great place to grow networks. I think Facebook is there more for selling to consumers. Same with Instagram too, selling direct to consumers. You make a content strategy. I'm not going to go too deeply into this, but it's going to involve using photos, video, written things. You'll find the thing that works for you. Think about your profile and everything that goes into it as a long drawn out brain dump. So you're actually delivering value through what you do. You want to be helpful. You want to be actionable. You want people to be able to take action from the things that you teach them. You may want to be inspirational or entertaining, any of those things. As long as you're one or two of those things in your posts, you can't really go wrong. And then build a community around that. This is the hardest thing, of actually building a group of people who you can share in a one-to-many situation. So you're doing workshops or webinars like I'm doing now. It's easy to scale when you do that. It's very easy to monetize. You can charge entrance to things. You can say this is a $10 course. If people understand that you have value to give them, they will pay for that. And you will grow faster as well than what you will of just coaching one person at a time.